Hey Slick Dealers, it's Andrew, your resident computer and video game enthusiast, and today I'm here at the headquarters of iBuyPower.com, a popular online retailer and builder of custom gaming PCs. Now my goal today is to get some expert knowledge on how to build a PC with purpose so you can avoid overspending, and we'll be talking with Brad, a lead engineer from IBP. So you ready to geek out? Let's get our build on. All right, I'm here with Brad from iBuyPower. He's a lead engineer. Brad, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Will you explain to everybody a little bit about what you do here at IBP?
Yeah, so I lead the product department here. We're in charge of all of the product validation testing. You know, when new boards, new video cards come in, we got to make sure they all work together. We also do overclocking testing and you know, benchmarking and things like that. And then occasionally we also get to design some of our own chassis, which is pretty cool.
Nice. I think it's safe to say that Brad here is a PC expert.
Yeah, I hope so.
Nice. So what do we have in front of us here? What are we building today?
All right. So this is our Best Buy Trace 930. That's in our signature Trace chassis, and then this is will be available in Best Buy during holiday season. It's sort of our turnkey mid-entry level gaming PC. You know, somewhere around $1,000 in terms of what the budget would be like.
So Brad, when you're building a PC or iBuyPower is building one for customers, what are some of the priorities you like to focus on, like reliability or performance?
Yeah, we try to hit, you know, all aspects of the PC. So that means, like, you know, reliability. We're using quality components, name brand components. You know, performance-wise, you know, we're not going to sell anything that's not a gaming PC, right? We don't, you know, not going to try and disguise an office PC as a gaming PC. Everything here is gaming hardware. You know, you have i7s and, you know, GTX and Radeon graphics. And, you know, also make sure it looks cool. You know, I think that's a lot of gaming is, you know, make sure it's got the lights and things that people are looking for. That's pretty popular right now.
Now, before we start putting pieces in here, I wanted to talk a little bit about specs since you mentioned that earlier. So there's a lot of discussion in our forum threads. Whenever a piece goes up, it's always about specs. Well, larger number is clearly better. But for computers, if you have an overpowered machine, does it have an easier time of doing a particular task versus a PC that was built specifically for that task?
Yes and no. You can build kind of a jack of all trades machine, you know, if you just sort of like exceed the spec in each individual component from what you need. And of course it'll do well, but you're going to spend a lot more money than you need to. And then, you know, you could possibly exceed the capability of that one machine, that jack of all trades machine, by focusing on the parts that are important to what you're going to be doing. And that's not necessarily any one part. It depends on what your usage is.
I see. So you should really build to a specific purpose.
Yeah, I mean, assuming that you're on a budget, and most people are.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha. I know a lot of Slick Dealers are on a very strict budget. Nice, cool. Let's get started. So what's the first thing we should do here?
All right. So in terms of what we have here, we have a i7 7700 CPU. I've already put it in the board because I didn't want to screw that up.
Right. But actually, let me ask you about that, screwing that up. Now, there's a lot of people that say that touching the contact points or getting finger oils on that can affect how it connects or the voltage going through. Is that true?
Yes. You definitely don't want to be doing this if your hands are dirty or sweaty or greasy, especially the bottom of the CPU. I mean, it's not as delicate as some people may think it is, but you don't want to take any chances. That's like the most delicate part of the PC is the CPU socket. Right. So that's where you got to be really careful. I haven't seen any issues, but you know, don't want to take any chances.
Gotcha, right. So don't rub it on your cap before you put it
in. Definitely don't. Yeah, so usually what we like to do before we put the motherboard and everything in the case is we sort of prep it. Like I said, put the CPU in, we're going to put the cooler on and put the RAM in, because it's just going to be easier to do that while it's outside the case than while you put it in. You're kind of restricted on space. Right. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing here.
Okay, cool. Now, when you mount the CPU cooler on there, there's a lot of argument and debate about the type of thermal paste that you put on there and then the method in which you apply it. Is that really such a delicate or specific process?
Thermal paste application, there's like different camps. Are you supposed to spread it out? Are you supposed to use like the pea-sized, dot? We've done a ton of tests, you know, socketed, resocketed, pasted, repasted CPUs like 1,000 times. And it's more about not using too much.
Gotcha.
You know, you can. It's actually the amount you need is actually very small. People kind of underestimate how well it flattens out under the cooler and how little surface area it actually needs to fill. So usually I would just say don't lather it on too thick. You know, like the whole pea-sized dot like actually works pretty well, because the actual part of the CPU that needs to be cooled is not the entire surface of the chip. It's right in the middle. It's about half the size of what you see.
Cool. Yeah, I've always thought that, you know, a little bit of thermal paste is better than no thermal paste, and I think that's really just kind of what you gotta cover.
Yeah, because all you're doing, I mean, the top of the CPU is very flat, the bottom of the cooler is very flat. You're just filling in the like little microscopic like air gaps. Gotcha. That's what it's for.
Okay, cool.
So I'm gonna do that.
And is thermal paste selection super important as well, or any kind of popular brand is okay?
Yeah, I think for that you have to ask yourself like, what are you going for? If you're going for the extreme end of like high-end overclocking, you need the best cooling performance, you know, you should be going for one of the high-end thermal paste. If overclocking is not your thing, you know, if you just want to make sure it's going to work, then pretty much anything will work. And most heat sinks will come with their own paste.
Already applied?
Yeah, either already applied or in like a little packet that you apply yourself.
Cool.
So
not as complicated as some people make it out to be.
Yeah, you just want to make sure you do it. Since this is not a K CPU, we're going to be using a regular stock fan.
Okay.
You know, if we were to use a overclockable CPU, we would use liquid cooling for extra cooling performance.
Okay. Now you mentioned liquid cooling. There are a bunch of different camps. I personally am still scared of liquid cooling for its potential to leak. Is that not an issue anymore these days?
For the all-in-one coolers, we see almost no leaks. It's if there's physical damage to the unit, like if you drop the PC or something, there's a chance. But the number of times we've seen those, I can count them on my fingers in 5 years, you know, how many leaks we've had, and we've sold thousands, tens of thousands of these things. So I wouldn't worry about leaking. If you're building your own loop, so one of the DIY routes is to do a full custom loop where you're cutting the tubes and, you know, putting the fittings on yourself, then you have to be a little more careful because there's a lot more points of failure. But for the all-in-one units, like, you can trust them not to leak.
Oh, okay, nice, nice. And so if you're not overclocking, then the benefit of liquid cooling is just it's a quieter system. There's no fans.
Yeah, and it also it gives you the ability to kind of make the system look a little nicer, in my opinion. I think that an all-in-one liquid cooler looks better in a PC than just a giant heatsink in the middle. Because even if you're not overclocking, if you have one of the K or X CPUs, you can't rely on the stock cooler, right? Those little tiny heatsinks are not gonna deal with the heat. And so your option is either a giant heatsink or a liquid cooler. And you know, I think the liquid cooler works well in most scenarios. Next thing I'm gonna do is the RAM. For this here we have DDR4. This will be running at 2400 megahertz. And that's pretty standard for sort of our mainstream systems. You know, with the non-overclockable CPU, there's not really a point in adding like too much of higher speed memory. Again, you're going to be spending money where you don't need to. Right.
Now, that's actually a good point. I was going to ask you. So there are other speeds like 2666, 3000, 3200. Can we see a difference in those speeds, or is it not necessary for most gaming?
Benchmarks will show you that there is a measurable difference, but I have never heard of a situation where there is an observable like difference that you can feel. The only game that I've ever heard of that actually responds to memory speed is Overwatch. But that's more of like, you don't want to be way down at 2133. Most of the memory out there right now is like 2666 or higher, and then you'll be fine there. But we've heard of some reports of people like verifying that, you know, using 3000 versus 2133, there's like a difference in kind of the choppiness of the game.
Okay, but specifically Overwatch.
But that's the only game. You know, we've shown in, let's say in Counter-Strike Go, that's a very CPU and RAM kind of favoring game. The difference between 2133 and 3000 is the difference between 250 frames per second and 252 frames per second, right? So it's really minute.
I see. Good to know. So go for the brand that you like, and then the price point that you like, and you're pretty much good. So in this case, larger number isn't necessarily better; it's just more expensive.
Yes. You know, it's more capacity is far more important than the speed.
Gotcha.
You know, you don't want to, you know, skimp out on your memory capacity. You know, used to be that 8 gigs was the recommended for pretty much anything, but now you got the OSs and the programs are a little more heavyweight, especially for a gaming PC. We see that 16 gigabytes is now kind of the new norm, because it's like web browsers can take up 3 gigs on their own now.
I
So
see.
you definitely want to have enough RAM. Next thing I'm going to do, put the board in the case. Already have some of the wires pre-ran in here, so it makes it a little bit quicker. Another thing to watch out for, the number one newbie mistake that we see is people forgetting to put the I/O shield in the back of the case. And you put your motherboard in and you forget about this little metal shield, and then you have to redo the whole thing.
I see. Is there any detriment to not having the shield in when the PC is complete?
Not really. It just doesn't look very good. I think you get some better grounding with that shield in place, but you know, in terms of like airflow, it's not going to really make any difference. It's more just, it's there, you should put it in, and then if you forget it, it's 10 minutes back.
Right.
And then do it again. So get a couple of screws into the motherboard. All right. And then you were speaking about components that you can spend a little bit too much money on, and I think that the motherboard is definitely one of those where if you're on a budget, it's one of the things that you can definitely look towards the bottom end of the spectrum. As long as it has all the ports that you need, it's gonna do the job for you. You know, the difference between a $40 motherboard and a $400 motherboard in terms of like straight out of the box performance is going to be about the same. The only difference will be if you want to overclock, obviously you want a motherboard that supports it and does well.
For somebody looking to upgrade their existing PC, let's say they bought one from iBuyPower already and it's a couple years old, what's the most impactful upgrade that they can make?
For sure, if you don't have an SSD, that is number one. The difference in just overall PC performance, your experience from a mechanical drive to a solid state drive, it's like, you know, once you have experienced the computer with an SSD, like you'll never go back. Most gamers already, you know, the SSDs have been around for 5-6 years in the mainstream now, but if you don't have one, definitely get one. I put the graphics card in. Next, so this is a GTX 1060 3 gig. This is really good for 1080p gaming. You know, if you're using 1440p or 4K, you want to go a little higher than this, but the thing's perfect for single monitor 1080p. Pretty much handles anything out there right now. Nice. So again, this is like why we choose this for our kind of mainstream like turnkey gaming PC.
And this will run most games, no problems, and it's a good price point.
Yeah. This card, you know, depending on time of year, this card's about $200. I expect on Black Friday it'll go lower than that. So it's a really good, solid card. Very energy efficient, very quiet. You know, you can kind of see, like, it looks small, but that doesn't mean that it's low performance. That just means that it's very energy efficient. They don't need a giant fan to cool it.
Now, Brad, live streaming is really popular now with people playing games and then getting a Twitch channel or a YouTube channel. That can be pretty resource heavy doing both. What do you suggest people to do to make sure that they can handle both processes?
If you're thinking about getting a PC for live streaming, the normal kind of advice for gamers is to look at your graphics card first, but you definitely want to be looking at your CPU first instead. If live streaming is your goal, you're gonna want probably 6 to 8 dedicated cores. You know, so not talking about a 4-core with some multi-threading technology. I'm talking about like a real 6-core, 8-core CPU. And that's because most games will respond well anywhere between 2 to 4 cores, and then kind of like don't really care after that. But as soon as you add the live streaming into the mix, you're taking at least 1 or 2 cores dedicated just for that. So if your game wants 3 or 4 cores and you're dedicating 2 to live streaming, you're bottlenecking on the CPU, and you can feel it. You know, you'll notice your frame rate will probably drop to half. It'll be a little clunkier. You'll sense some input delay. But if you have a good enough CPU, good enough, fast enough CPU, that helps kind of smooth that out.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I always thought it was the graphics card because it's all, you know, graphic video related, but the multitasking is actually what's more important, and that's handled by the CPU.
Yeah, so your priorities kind of flip. If you're just focused on gaming, the CPU is a little less important. The graphics card is the most important. But if you want a good stream quality, you know, especially with the compression and stuff that's going to be once you upload, the in-game graphics quality is not going to be as important as making sure everything just is smooth.
Right.
right? That's going to look better for your viewers, and it's going to be better for you as the gamer. That you're not going to like feel like why is it backed up so much? Like why is it so slow?
So that's pretty much it for the build, right, as far as putting it together?
Yeah, there's a couple more cables that I need to make. You know, we got the USB 3 and the front panel headers. I can get those plugged in really quick.
Now, for first-time PC builders, what are some tips that you would offer somebody who's scared or a little nervous about doing their first custom build?
The first thing is allocate yourself a bunch of time.
Okay.
that's honestly, like, you know, people will tell you, oh, it only takes an hour, oh, it only takes 2 hours. Give yourself like 3 or 4 hours at least. You know, run through the process first, right? Like watch a YouTube video or read an article online. You know, familiarize yourself with what you're going to be doing, because otherwise you won't get lost, or you don't want to get stumped halfway through and then have to go run back and consult the instructions. That'll kind of throw everything off. Other than that, yeah, just give yourself some time and then follow the instructions. You know, it's not too complicated. It's just kind of intimidating the first time. But take it easy and not so big a deal.
Yeah, cool. And everything comes with an instruction manual. That's the key, is to go ahead and read that first.
Yes.
Read it all the way through and then start doing your build.
It's like building IKEA furniture or something like that, right? Like it doesn't matter how good you think you are. If you haven't done it before, you should read the instructions first.
Right. Cool. So we've got our trace system built and ready to go. Should we fire it up, Brad?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Nice. I love all the RGB lighting. Now the LED lighting is a big customization trend right now. What do you think is the next big thing?
So what we usually look towards in terms of customization is we look at what the modders are doing, because a lot of times like that eventually will trickle down into like the consumer products. We still think there's a lot of room left for customization, you know, whether it's with lighting, whether it's with colors or panels, things like that. You know, we have this year it's RGB and tempered glass, and those used to be reserved exclusively for modded systems, and now you see that coming into mainstream. Paint jobs, graphics, those kinds of things, there's still a lot of room to improve, like somehow getting that into the retail market.
Wow, what an awesome opportunity to be here at the headquarters of iBuyPower.com to see where all the magic happens. Special thanks to lead engineer Brad for sharing his expert knowledge with us and taking us through a PC build. And if you want to see more cool content and awesome PCs like this, go to our blog at slickdeals.net/news.